Hi everyone and welcome along. Today we're going to paint potted geraniums. So we're going to do some lovely miniature illustrations, perfect bullet journal doodles, or just a lovely thing to maybe put on a card. So grab your paints and let's get started. I'm beginning by sketching out a few pots and what I'm doing is I've got a baseline, which is a really helpful guide just to get my pots kind of even, but I just start off with two slightly diagonal lines, and if I've got a bottom line, then it means I can very easily draw in that simple curve on the bottom for the base and then a slightly shallower one on the top. And I'm not going to draw in the sort of the completed rim at the top, the back half, because we're going to have our geraniums coming in there instead. So this is really exciting. I absolutely adore painting like miniature things, as many of you know, and geraniums are great fun. It's funny, when I told Ant that I was painting geraniums today, he was like, what? They're really like passé flowers. He just thinks of his granny when he thinks of geraniums, but I was assuring him that they are extremely trendy. So we're going to just do a lovely array of lovely geraniums. So in miniature, it means they're slightly more simplified. I've got a bit of green gold and sap green, and I'm just going to sort of mix between the two. But I'm going to begin by just painting in very sort of delicate little stems with my size 2/10 brush, just to get a sense of the shape of this piece. So we'll just begin here. Now, geraniums grow sort of quite wild and waywardly. It's kind of the beauty of them, but usually the pot kind of usually begins with one main stem. So that's what I'm going to try and honour. So we're just putting that in nice and simply, and then I can put in the next one here. And this means that you can be sure that your plants will look really nice and sort of evenly spaced across the piece. There'll be a nice balance of composition, just how you want it if you place in these lines before you begin, but just do them nice and lightly and nice and thin as well. So really using the fine tip of your brush. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. So clean that off and we can start to add in. We're going to begin with our flowers because they are more of the focal point, and we're going to do classic red geraniums. So I've got some cadmium red, and it's just the perfect colour for our geraniums. We're going to be using a small brush. I've got a 4/10 here, pointed round, and we are going to start by painting in lovely little clusters of flowers. And I'm going to begin from this side and work my way over. So I'm going to sort of be doing this lovely little sort of teardrop shape to begin with, and I'm just going to be painting these sort of almost like clouds of the little petal shape, leaving some unpainted space in between. Building up what is going to be a lovely geranium, and we're going to be adding a bit more detail to these flowers, but for now this is all we need. As you make your way through these initial stems. There are a few variations we can do. So we've got our full sort of pom-pom geraniums, but then we've got the ones that are just beginning to open up. And so these ones are all angled just a little bit higher, so they aren't sort of fanning out all the way. And what we'll do is we'll add in some little stems for those. And then we've also got maybe further down some less full flowers that are just more, just little 4 flowers, and I might pop in another one in there behind, because what's going to happen is we're going to add in these first ones, then start to pop in some leaves, and then we'll start to see places where there are gaps, and we can just add in more beautiful little geranium pom-poms and get a really amazing sort of full looking plant. Now to look at the leaves. Now there are always exceptions to the rule, but on the whole I find that the geranium leaves tend to congregate towards the base of the plant, and the flowers are the things that sort of soar a bit higher. So I've just started painting my first leaf, and I'll talk you through what I'm doing. So let's finish that one off. Okay, so I've got some green gold, and the leaf shape is really, really fun. It's like a big sort of frilly lily pad. So we want to sort of create this frilly outline, and then in goes a little pizza slice there. I'm going to clean off my brush and draw in the colour that is already here. And you have to work fairly fast to make sure that you get a nice blend. And then a little bit of sap green. I'm just dabbing in some little details. We can do some faint lines coming out from that centre, maybe a little bit of a frill around the edge as well. So those are our sort of open-faced leaves. And then we're going to have them sort of growing off the side, coming off in all angles. So we'll pop one in here so you can see what I mean. So a leaf growing off to the side, it's going to sort of curl up, clean off that brush, fill it in. Don't want too much water on the brush. And then a bit of sap green. And you'll be able to judge when it's dry enough to get some little bits of definition with painting in those lines. You might need to wait a little bit longer. So now I'm going to just fill up my sort of area down and around here, and I will have some smaller leaves coming up the stems and flying off the side. But this is a really nice exercise to just sort of sit and do on sunny afternoon, or rainy afternoon at the moment. The time of filming, it's May 2021, and in England we are experiencing such a wet May. It's rather disappointing, but it means we can stay in and paint. So yeah, I'm just going to start filling up my pots with leaves, and I'm going to make sure that some of my leaves sort of come down and hang over the top of the plant pots too. So I'm starting to fill everything up, but I thought I'd just reiterate a few of the techniques. So some of these leaves that are up on their side, creating a nice sort of almost like sort of horn shape, I suppose, and then getting a little bit of the sap green. And dabbing that in whilst it's still wet, and then we could pop in a few sort of upright leaves that are just sort of curling over. So you can do that by just doing a little U shape like that and then filling it in. There's lots of sort of choice with ways in which you can create fun little leaves. Another thing is just sort of popping in a few towards the top, a few little ones. Always starting with that green gold. Do your little outline, clean your brush off, use the water on the page, and then a little dab of Sap Green whilst it's still wet. And then you can see here, adding in a few more lines of definition when they're in a sort of semi-dried state. Just adds to that little bit of detail. It's all about getting that balance, I think. When you're painting a miniature piece, you don't want to go too over the top with detail, but just a little bit really helps. Now this is a really good point to have a look at where we can add in some more flowers, because the first thing to think about is how we connect some of these ones on stems that we haven't connected yet. So these ones here, where we have a sort of cluster that are still in the process of growing, what we can do from that point is we can connect those like that. But also what happens is you get a few unopened buds. So we'll get a little bit of red and just do a few little blobs of paint on the end of those. So I'm now going to go round, and any that I've painted in that kind of style, we can add those. I think that's what I like so much about painting geraniums, is there's just so much variation in the stages of growth. And all the while I'm looking at how I'm filling up the gaps and sort of piecing together this jigsaw. Okay, I'm going to just fill out those and then we'll see where else we can put some leaves in. We've got a really nice coverage now, so I'm going to add a little bit more colour to the geraniums themselves. So I've mixed up a bit of Alizarin Crimson in with the Cadmium Red, and I'm painting in little curves of colour, and you can see it's just a shade darker, and I'm putting these little curves onto the base of just some of the geranium petals, and I think it really brings them to life. I think don't do it to all of them, just the sort of bottom half, I suppose, this more shadowy part. And this is to create a more of a sense of a roundness, so that you've got these darker colours sort of around the edge. And the lighter ones in the middle. Now it's finally time to look at our plant pots. So I'll just grab a slightly larger brush to mix up a lovely terracotta, because we're going to do a classic terracotta pot. So here is some yellow ochre and a bit of cadmium orange, and we're just going to pop those together. And then I'm also going to use some burnt sienna and my French ultramarine, because we're going to sort of have a touch of shadow in on these terracotta pots, but I also want to use it to get a kind of slightly rough, blotchy feel on some of it, because I really like the more sort of rustic terracotta pot, I suppose, not the perfect kind of cartoonish ones. So I'm going to use my size 2 brush, and I've got to be careful now to make sure that I don't sort of disturb the geranium leaves too much, but also just to keep it all looking nice and like I've got a light touch. So I'm going to start with a quite sort of dilute bit of the cadmium orange terracotta yellow ochre mix, and I'm going to start by painting in the edges, the sort of sides of my pot here. Clean my brush off and start to, got a bit of pink on the brush there we go, start to kind of draw it in. And now I'm going to just start to add in a bit more colour of the brown and a bit more of the yellow ochre, just a bit more strong. Keep cleaning off the brush each time, and now, yeah, start just sort of dabbing the brush inwards. We don't want too much on the brush as it goes in. And now, being a little bit braver, getting a bit of my darker shadow in here. I don't know if you can hear the rain beating down on the window, but it is a very wet day today, so perfect day for a bit of watercolour painting. And because this is so dilute here, I can just get right in around those leaves without worrying too much, even with this fairly large brush. And I'm really pleased with the texture I'm getting on that pot. Now I'm going to get a tiny bit of the cadmium red and mix it in with my orange mix there. And just for a little bit of a warmer highlight, just finish things off like that. Now we need to sort of start bringing round the rim, so I need to very carefully start to paint a line that I imagine goes all the way around the edge, and we will fill the rest of that in when we come to it. Okay, so I'm going to start to fill in these pots in the same way, but these ones have got rims and a saucer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to treat them all as separate entities. So let's try this one here. We've got our saucer. So I'm going to paint this all completely before touching the pot. So I'm going to do the same process where I start with the edges, start to sort of blot in a bit, start to build up the colour. And of course this one we've got the little detail line. Now I've got the two sections painted, I can start to do the one in the middle. And what's nice is, although they've dried partially, I don't mind at all if I just touch into them with the brush, because I think that'll be quite a fun blend. But ultimately we want them to feel like separate sections of pot. So you can play around with yellow ochre, cadmium orange, burnt sienna and French ultramarine blue, and then a bit of cadmium red in for a real bit of warmth. If you're struggling with your watercolour of how to make sure you get the right amount of water on your brush each time, I've started a series of really speedy watercolour quick fix videos. We've got a playlist for them and they're going to come out every Friday, and it's going to focus on a little kind of problem, things like how to get the right amount of water on your brush, how to paint perfect seamless blends, all that kind of thing. So we're going to be rolling those out over the next few weeks, and hopefully continue to do so as well. And we will always sort of get your opinion on what it is you want to learn. So look out for those, because the first one was all about how to get the right amount of water on your brush and then onto your paper. So these are looking really lovely and rustic. I'm just going to finish that last one off, and then we'll come back for a bit of shadow. This shadow mix is what we need for our soil. We've got quite a sort of dark brown colour here, and I am just going to quite lightly just sort of dab in bits of soil. I don't want a solid colour here, I want a bit of a texture. So by dabbing in the colour, you will get that. It's probably not much visible, to be honest. And then for a bit of shadow for our pots, our shadow mix, all we need to do is add more blue into this, and soon we get a slightly more sort of petrol-y colour, which is really nice for painting shadows. So I'm going to get a slightly larger brush. We're going to do a little bit of shadow on the base here, and it's very important when you paint in your shadow that you do it in as few strokes as possible, so you don't disturb the colour underneath, and also doing it with a large brush just really helps you get a nice sort of larger coverage with fewer strokes. And we also want it quite dilute, so I'm just getting quite a watery bit here. Okay, here we go. So I've decided that my light source is coming from this direction. So it's just a little bit, not too much. And of course we've got the rim, but we've also got the leaf there. And we're not going to see a huge amount on that one. So yeah, you don't need much, but it really does bring it all to life. And then the only other thing is a little bit of shadow on some of the leaves and things. So, but what we're going to do is we're going to take that shadowy colour and actually add it in to our green. So French Ultramarine, a little bit of burnt sienna, in with the Sap Green, makes a really nice, deep, dark, bluey green colour, which just allows us a little bit of shadow. And when I say shadow, I'm sort of adding it also to create a little bit of definition on some of these leaves that maybe need to really stand out a bit more. So it doesn't necessarily follow exactly the same principles of this is your light source and it's coming from here. You can see I'm just adding it to some of the stems, some of the leaves. Just wherever I feel there needs to be a little bit more definition. Now, I think this would be really, really fun in a journal page because they're really lovely and small. They'd sit really nicely in a little row. Or how about a lovely card? It's really nice when you can actually use your watercolour painting skills for something to actually either give to someone or to enjoy for yourself. But yeah, I'd love to see what you come up with and what you use these for. And then just a few little notches up the main stem, around the base. And there we go, a lovely collection of potted geraniums. Thanks so much for watching. I want to say a massive thank you to my patrons for their support, because without that support I wouldn't be able to create all these videos that everyone can enjoy. And if you enjoyed it, then hit the like button and comment below to let me know how you're getting on. And of course, if you subscribe, then you'll never miss another video. Until next time, bye!